Alligator Alcatraz. The name says it all. Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this is The Breakdown. If you're liking the content on this channel, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the foolishness coming out of this presidential administration. So back to Florida, sunny state, my home, and no shortage of drama. So in the latest twist and turn out of this administration, the Florida governor, in conjunction with Florida Attorney General Utmeyer, want to open what's called Alligator Alcatraz. They are proposing a place for migrants to be held, undocumented immigrants to be held, that would be probably the most oppressive circumstance you can think of in this continental United States, kind of mirroring what we're seeing in El Salvador. So let me break this down for you. Florida Governor DeSantis and his administration started to build an immigrant detention center on what was a deserted airstrip, which is deep in the Everglades. Now, this area was supposed to be one of the largest airports in the world back in the 1970s. But at that point, there was a lot of concerns about the effect it would have on the environment, because literally it's in the middle of a swamp. But when you think swamp, you're like, oh, gross, but there's actually marine life. There's more than just alligators, snakes, and mosquitoes. While they play a very huge role and you don't want to mess with any of them, there's also plants. There's a huge ecosystem that is involved in the Florida Everglades, which is why there's been so much activity around preservation of the Everglades. There's so many conservation organizations that monitor and raise concerns about any development, building, any encroachment on the Everglades. So back in the 1970s, President Ford was like, yeah, okay, there's too many environmental concerns to develop an airport here, so let's just make it a nature preserve. And that's what it basically became. And so any building that was done there basically is just kind of they did kind of pave some stuff and kind of have a bit of an area, but it's been abandoned since the 1970s. So basically the Florida governor and attorney general are like, hey, this would be a perfect spot to have a detention camp. So now they're planning on opening 1,000 beds in this facility. And when I say facility, I'm using that term very loosely, because literally it's going to be a tent camp. Think of what we heard about in Arizona, where the police chief Arpaio got pulled out of office for his foolishness and got elected out of office eventually for his foolishness and basically housing people that were incarcerated in tents in like the over 100-degree heat of the Arizona summer. Well, Florida clearly took the wrong lesson from that entire experience and now want to replicate the same thing in Florida. So this is going to be 1,000-bed facility. It's going to be tents and trailers. That's it. There's not actually going to be a physical structure. They're not actually building a facility with air conditioning or anything like that. No, they're going to be basically sleeping out in tents and trailers. Now, for those who don't know, Florida has 2 seasons, hot and hotter. Okay, there's no maybe in December you may look out for a week with 75-degree weather. But the majority of the year, our temperatures go from 80 degrees and up. In the summer, 93, 95, easy is the norm. And doesn't talk about the humidity, how it can be just stifling because you just can't breathe. And then you add into that swamp conditions, which make it even more mucky and impossible to breathe. Forget it. If you have any kind of pre-existing health conditions, you would have an issue in that particular facility. And if you're just a human being, you're going to have issues in that facility because, again, mosquitoes. Our mosquitoes in Florida are gangster. They choose violence daily. So to think of being trapped in extreme heat with mosquitoes that also carry disease. So now you have the issue of, are the people that are going to be held there going to get adequate health care? Because again, mosquitoes spread disease. You can now have an outbreak, and now you have even more problems in that particular facility. And I'm not even getting to the moral aspect of this. I'm just talking about the basics, logistics of how this could even work. So this facility, which they're going to call Alligator Alcatraz, is going to be, the reason why they're doing this, of course, is to cozy up to this presidential administration. And of course, how they went about it was hella shady. So the governor has been lobbying, obviously, the president and the federal government for months to get more autonomy because they also decided to do their own parallel immigration crackdown, mostly after the governor's failed attempt to become president. Yeah, let's not forget about that. So he was looking to try to, out-president the president and even be more intense about ICE raids and using local police to try and get more immigrants incarcerated. That's literally I'm just calling it what it is. That's literally what he's trying to do. And so the cost to Florida taxpayers, $450 million a year. A year. All right. Now they can ask for reimbursement from the federal government, and there is a fund of about $625 million that has been carved out of FEMA. So FEMA had this allocation set aside to be able to help local governments and nonprofits in terms of housing, feeding, and transporting immigrants who have been released and processed by Homeland Security. So let's back up for a second. So you would be forgiven if you thought that when someone came here and asked for asylum or something along those lines, that they just kind of flow through the country willy-nilly, because that's all we've been told over and over again. But this is actually how it works. When you come to this country and you want to get asylum, right? Let's just take that particular instance. I'm not talking about somebody who came undocumented and just kind of stayed under the radar the entire time. I'm talking specifically about people who came to this country undocumented, but they presented themselves at the border asking for asylum. So if you want to get asylum, you come, you present yourself to Customs and Border Patrol, you say that you want to get asylum, you're usually held for a little while, maybe like a day or two or so, and then you're given a date that you need to appear and explain as to, why you need asylum, et cetera, et cetera. So you end up going through this entire process where you have to do regular check-ins, there's court dates and all of that. So it's not like you get to claim asylum and then you get to hang out for the next, whatever amount of time. Like you have to constantly be checking in, and the government knows where you are, right? Because you have to give them updated addresses and all of that. You can't just go off the radar. So this particular fund from FEMA was earmarked to be able to help local governments and communities assist those folks who are pending a status change or pending a ruling saying whether or not they will be granted status to be able to stay here because they're seeking asylum. So that's kind of what that money was used for. Of course, this administration and Kristi Noem and all of them are saying like, oh, this was just the Biden administration slush fund to give to whatever, right? So that is the money that has been set aside, and the Florida government can ask for reimbursement from the feds to be able to defray some of the cost of having this camp, because literally that's what it's going to be, a camp. Let's not get it twisted. So they can ask for a reimbursement, but that's still $450 million per year of Florida taxpayer funds that's going to house people that are undocumented. By the way, let's not forget there was a system in place to be able to address it. They just completely ignored that aspect. And by the way, you do know that Presidents Biden and Obama seem to have no problem in deporting more than 1 million people, but doing so via the legal means. So again, this inhumanity and all this craziness doesn't need to happen if you actually did it the quote unquote legal way based on the protocols we have in place. You can still expedite removal without all this cruelty. But again, the cruelty is the point. So on top of the ridiculous amount of money that it's going to cost the Florida taxpayers, we're also looking at the fact that the government is getting this for a song. So the state of Florida has offered to pay Miami-Dade County, where this plot of land is located, $20 million for the land. The last time it was valued was $195 million. So there's that. Of course, the Miami-Dade mayor, Daniela Levine Cava, is like, what are y'all doing here? I need to see more. This is kind of insane. And what's really scary on top of everything else is the speed that this is happening. Literally, a video went up earlier this week. Next thing you know, we're talking about, oh, by next week, we're going to be open for business. So there was no real discussion, negotiation, no transparency, nothing. Just boom, boom. We're going to take a section of the Everglades and create a camp and call it a day. Thanks for playing. Now, let me go back for a minute to the environmental concerns, because that's actually a big portion of this, right? So again, like I said before, in the 1970s, President Ford was like, no, we're going to just declare this to be a nature preserve and call it a day. And that's because it's a part of a very sensitive ecosystem. So having this kind of camp would pollute the water and the air, which would impact the ecosystem within the Everglades. It's home to a ton of wildlife besides the alligators and the pythons. There's also panthers. And so that could disrupt their habits, and you don't know what that may end up resulting in. It could end up resulting in the alligators looking for a different habitat, which could then encroach on where humans live. Because again, yes, the Everglades are here, but you've got Naples, you've got all these other cities and counties that are around the Everglades that have people living in them. So if you do something to disrupt the balance of the Everglades, it's going to impact the communities and the people around it. So you have that aspect. And also you have the native tribes that live in the area, including the Miccosukee and the Seminole tribes, and they always want to live in harmony with nature, and they don't want this in their backyard. Let's just have that. So all of this seems to be, again, happening at breakneck speed. We don't know where this is all going to go. But one thing we do know, we know that the people who are going to be sent there are not going to get due process, that they're going to be housed in inhumane conditions. Again, extreme heat, predators, mosquitoes, possibility of airborne disease, all of that. And this is going to harm the environment. And it also could potentially harm residents in the surrounding communities. Yet again, more cruelty and foolishness out of this administration and, of course, the folks that are sucking up to him. I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this was The Breakdown. Take care.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.